Hi, my name is Erica Asimwe.
And I'm Richard Taylor.
And welcome to the Crossing the Raging River podcast. In our last episode, we looked at the cost of scarcity leadership, and we could see that it really has a high cost on people, and especially those who are being led. So today, we want to look at what happens if you don't have a scarcity mindset. If it's not a scarcity mindset, then what is it, Richard?
It's an abundant mindset. It's an abundant mentality.
Yeah.
And really, this episode is going to focus on the power of abundant leadership. Mm-hmm. And I hope that this episode will feel lighter for leaders, like that there actually is a way forward in which they can make a difference in spite of the challenges that they face.
Mm-hmm. I know this is something you're very passionate about, just like I love talking about asset-based community development and the indignity of dependency. Tell us a little bit about where this concept came from and why you think this is a way that we should be leading.
It's actually quite a unique story.
Yeah.
I grew up in the country of Kenya, but in 2002, after having just graduated from university, I came to Rwanda for the first time. The country was in a very, very difficult place.
Yeah.
Of course, as you know, in 1994, there was the genocide against the Tutsi. It was one of the worst genocides of the 20th century. It absolutely devastated the country.
Yeah.
And to pick up the pieces from a genocide like that, where the whole social fabric of the country, the economy of the country had been torn apart. It was really like Rwanda hit, as then Minister of Foreign Affairs said, they had hit rock bottom. Charles Murugandi was my friend, and he said, we've really hit rock bottom. And I remember in those days, I wasn't very experienced, but I was paying attention to what was going on, because I saw that even though the place had been really devastated, that there was a lot of people that were hoping for a better future.
Yeah.
And they were trying to figure out, how can we really rebuild from this? How can we rebuild our justice system? How can we rebuild our education system? How can we build reconciliation and bring people back together? How can we rebuild our economy?
Yeah. And I'm sure there was a lot of need during that time, and it was easy for people to just sit back in a trap of fatalism. Things have just happened. Let's just leave things as they are.
In fact, that was one of the things that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
I just thought, if I had walked through such a terrible situation, I think I would have just given up.
Yeah.
You know, what else can I do? But that's not the spirit that I saw. And one of the things that struck me, Erica, was that, remember when you were talking about how, prior to colonialism,
yes,
that there were many communities, kingdoms, places in Africa that really had a lot of not only dignity, but a lot of ability to be able to come together as a community to make things happen. And there was a lot of historical traditions and customs and ways of working together that helped people to be successful, that were abundant in the way that people were thinking. Well, in Rwanda, I noticed that a lot of the policies that the government and other leaders were bringing were borrowing from their past and then repurposing it to the situation at hand. I'll give a couple examples.
Yes.
You know of them though, but one of them is gachacha.
Yeah.
So to deal with hundreds of thousands of people in prison that couldn't be tried by the normal justice system, those were like lower level perpetrators, went through a community-based court.
Yes.
And that brought a lot of the truth forward. It even allowed some of the survivors to be able to bury their loved ones with dignity, but also for some of those perpetrators to bring them back into the community so they could be reconciled.
Yeah, and I think the purpose was not just to punish like what other people would do, because that would cause more division. And that's a scarcity mindset of saying, if these people committed crimes, then they should continue to be punished. But that will cost the country more resources.
That's right.
Because you have to find prisons for them to be.
That's exactly right. And so in the end, that was one of the things among many that helped Rwandans to start to move forward. There was also the way of defining Rwandans as a unified way, to say, no, we're all Rwandans now. We have to start to operate that moving forward.
Yeah.
There was umuganda.
Yeah.
This kind of community practice where in the past people would come together to help each other to improve the community.
Yes.
And they brought that back, where every fourth Saturday, on Umuganda, people would all gather in their community to do community-based work and then gather together to talk about what was going on in their community and what they could do to improve it. They were taking ownership. It was such an abundant way of thinking.
Yeah. And one thing that I think about even as you are speaking, when you invite people to play a role in the solutions, there's a sense of shared ownership.
That's right.
So, people become proud of what they have done, of how they've contributed to something. They don't feel like this is Erica's thing and they pretend to do the right thing when you walk into the room.
But then when you're not there
in the room, everything falls apart. So sometimes we think we are good leaders only because we are there. But the true test of leadership is if people will still do the right thing in our absence.
That is a true test of leadership. What will they do when we're not there?
When we're not there, when we're not at the center of it. So tell us a little bit about what makes an abundant leader who he is. How do we define that?
Yeah, so abundant leadership, this was a way of looking at leadership that really came out of inspiration from the way that in Rwanda, but also in other places as well, I saw incredible African leaders who are drawing from their past in order to create a better future. Mm-hmm. And so in abundant leadership, we describe it as the act of serving a community. Yeah. So you start with that sort of heart, that motivation, that act of service by creating a shared vision. Mm-hmm. So as you said, it's not just the leader's vision, it's the vision of everyone within that community for what they need to accomplish to be able to move forward. And then as you move, you use the gifts and the abilities of everyone to accomplish that vision. That's really what abundant leadership is all about. And I think, you've been a part of helping to start the Abundant Leadership Institute and train leaders. And I think we've seen that to have a powerful impact in the lives of leaders in their communities in a growing way within Africa. What might be one of your favorite stories that you can think about of an abundant leader really making a difference?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories, but one of my favorite stories is one of a leader we know in Uganda who has a school. It started from a very small school with just 30 children, kindergarten, and now she has a whole primary school with more than 5 campuses and 1 online campus.
5 campuses.
More than 500 staff, 5,000 children.
From 30.
A common challenge we have in Africa is that teachers are some of the most undervalued people we know.
That's right.
Yet they are some of the most valuable people we have. They're the ones who've made us who we are. Sometimes I look back and think, if I'm able to write and read today and speak the English that I'm speaking, somebody took time to invest in me.
That's right.
But we don't see people valuing them. And this is something that Dr. Barbara has done very well in her organization. She looks at teachers as people who have dreams, because I think as leaders, sometimes we just concentrate on what we are gaining out of this. And that's a scarcity mindset. If I can overwork them enough and I can get them to do everything I need, I don't care if they benefit in any way, as long as I'm benefiting. But for her, she wanted everyone to benefit as she was growing. How would the teachers as well in this institution benefit? And they came up with a concept where they came up with a savings program that became, I think now it's worth billions of dollars, where teachers can borrow money from the savings group and even use them to fund their own dreams. So while they're there, they've built houses, they have
so it's billions of Ugandan shillings.
Yeah. And it was mostly meant to progress the lives of teachers. And you know what ends up happening? Because we are talking about the benefits of abundant leadership, is that you as the leader ends up benefiting in the long run. People have the idea that if you empower others and you help them achieve their dreams, you will lose. But you end up winning, because she has a very high retention rate for teachers, which is one of the biggest problems people have when they're starting institutions.
Their teachers just go.
They go because they're looking for better opportunities. So the question here is, how do the people that God has placed in our path, those that we are leading, how are they growing? How are they benefiting? How are their lives changing as a result of interacting with us? So that's something that I really admire from her.
That's very special. And I've had the chance to visit Dr. Barbara and also this community, one of her campuses in Bakuli, which was formerly quite a community that was quite troubled. Yeah. And we've seen incredible transformation in that community as well because of the efforts of Victorious, all starting from 30 children that she was with. Now that is incredibly abundant.
Yeah.
It's interesting as you talk about the story of Dr. Barbara, I think about that abundant mentality that's kind of at the root of that leadership. You know, somebody who doesn't possess their people. Remember we talked about with scarcity, they think that they own their own people, but rather they see them as a steward. You know, these people have been entrusted to me for a time so I can grow them, so I can develop them, so I can help them to release their gifts and be part of the vision.
Yeah. So you have to see things as if it's enough for everyone.
That's right. Going back to the, what is it, the ugali?
Yeah. That there is enough ugali, that we can all eat from this ugali. If this ugali is all we have, we are all going to be satisfied by it.
And we can also grow the ugali. We can multiply.
Yeah.
You know, that actually reminds me of, you know, Jesus, you know, because he was always multiplying, right? But one of the most biggest examples of that was, of course, the story we know well, which is the feeding of the 5,000, right? And Eric, in that story, what's always amazed me is he takes this small offering from a little boy whose mother probably remembered to pack the lunch this morning when no one else remembered, and he multiplies it. But he doesn't just multiply it enough to feed the people who were there. How much? Do you remember how much was left over of the baskets?
About 12, I think.
Yeah, you are right. 12 baskets.
Yeah. Left
over. It was actually more. It was in abundance. And leaders who have that type of mentality are always finding ways to multiply, to invest.
I think there's some mathematics around that.
The mathematics of scarcity and abundance. Okay, I have a question for you. Or do you want to ask me?
No, you can ask me. I'll try.
Okay, I'm wondering. You said you weren't as good at mathematics,
If it's not very difficult.
You said you were good at geography, and you did quite well earlier on the rivers.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if you can do as well on mathematics. So here's a question for you. Mathematics of scarcity and abundance. Last episode we talked about scarcity. Now we're talking about abundance. Erica, if you were to think about basic mathematics, what equations would you associate with scarcity?
Subtraction and division.
Aha! You get a sticker. You get a gold star. Subtraction and division. And why is that?
Because scarcity is always about taking away. There isn't enough. And we need to divide. Well, we've talked about that.
Yes.
Yeah. To lead, you lead by division. That's right.
And then now this becomes obvious, but then what equations are associated with abundance?
Addition and multiplication.
Yeah. And that's because leaders who work in an abundant way are always thinking about ways that they can expand what's available, that they can use the resources they have to make more available for others.
Yeah. So this means that it's actually possible.
It is actually possible. And we've seen a lot of leaders who have embraced this concept and have actually managed to do that within their organizations.
Yeah. So it's possible to adopt this abundant mindset, and it becomes our way of leadership. And it also brings a lot of joy. For me personally, I love seeing other people develop as I develop. I think, again, I said the true test of leadership is to see how people are doing when you're not there. But I think another good test of leadership is when after you're gone, things continue.
Succession.
Yeah.
And we often don't do succession very well in leadership, do we?
Yes. So that also, you have to be an abundant leader for you to prepare for that, for you to train others, to empower them to take over, to do things better than you, and to step back sometimes and let others shine.
Are you going to stay in power?
Yeah.
INPOWER, or are you going to empower
others?
EMPOWER.
That's the question we're going to leave with them to think about as we are concluding. We hope that this was very meaningful for you, and that you can see from real life examples that it's possible to adapt an abundant mindset and to be an abundant leader. So as usual, we invite you to visit our website at kurumbuka.org/podcast to access more resources.
Embrace the power of abundant leadership.